meeting of the Hubbardston Planning Board to order. Meetings of the Planning Board are broadcast live and digitally recorded. This meeting is being held both in person and virtually through Zoom pursuant to Governor Baker extending the COVID-19 rules, allowing public meetings to be conducted remotely so that board and committee members as well as members of the public can participate remotely. First on the agenda is public comments. Do we have anybody here for a public comment that is not on the agenda later on? All right, so moving down the list, we have minutes approval. Minutes acceptance. So the minutes that we're looking to accept are November 2nd, which is our last meeting, which makes me happy.
I'll make that motion.
Excellent. Hearing a motion, do we have a second?
I will second the motion.
Hearing a first and a second, discussion. Anybody have any corrections?
I just, I made some corrections. Those corrections are already embedded in the folder, and so you would pick them up automatically as a result of the changes that I made.
Okay, were any of them substantive or were they all typos?
Typos, spelling
Typographical?
mistakes, things of that nature. I'm trying spelling, not mistakes, but basically changes that I suggested based on, from a spelling perspective, okay?
All right, any further discussion? Okay, yeah, hearing no further discussion, calling a vote.
Livedall aye.
Demelia, aye. Holman's aye.
Steiger, aye?
And Monroe, aye. And I would like to publicly thank Mark for all of his hard work getting us caught up on minutes. I'm really excited to be at a place where we are approving the last meeting. There are still some minutes that we're working to get tracked down, but they are older minutes from 2021.
Virtually all of 2021. We're not
Yeah.
tracking them down, we gotta create them.
We, I guess just to talk about that very briefly, even though it comes under administrative matters, we were able to get into the old file system, and we have been able to find planning board materials going back all the way to 2001 or so, was it?
Minutes go back to 2004
Yep.
on the
Well,
Google,
thank you.
on the Google Drive.
Yep, so we've been able to track that down, and we're filling it in, and our goal here is to make it so all of us can search those electronically in
Oh,
Google
wow.
Drive, so that we can just have access to them for whenever we need to work on something for a meeting. Because that way, when we're like, hey, I wonder if there's any history on this, we can just ask the Google.
That would be nice.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So I think that's a great outcome, and I publicly thank Mark for helping us with that. Thank you very much. So next on the agenda is a couple of public hearings. These are listed in the order of I want to take these slightly out of order from how they're listed here. I want to go with the one for the town first, just because we're asking folks to stay late from work and answer questions for us on this. So pursuant to the provisions of MGL Chapter 40, subsection 15, the Hubbardston Planning Board is holding a public hearing at 6:30 p.m. or as soon as thereafter allowed by the agenda in the town office on the scenic road application submitted by the town of Hubbardston Highway Department for the removal of 13 trees on Williamsville Road, as listed in the application. The trees all lie within the town right-of-way and are slated for removal in order to reconstruct the bridge over the Burnshire River on Williamsville Road. Plans have been posted with our office, and plans can also be viewed at the Highway Department during regular business hours. And Mark, can you tell us about the notice going out on this?
That it was advertised in
Yep.
the Gardner News.
Excellent, thank you. And there's a list of trees that we're looking at here. There's a paper copy of the plan that's right on the table there that we can pass around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's my understanding that both Travis and our tree warden has gone out and looked at these trees.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I created a list and tagged all the trees.
Okay, and just for the record, please state your name and position with the town.
Yeah, Jeff Bork, tree warden.
you. So, when I looked at this, I looked at the plan and I went out and looked at the site, and there was one tree in particular that was near the parking lot for the DCR property. I just wanted to ask a little bit more about that one.
Yeah,
And-
so Travis and I spoke about that. That one specifically is, so the road is getting a little bit straightened out there. The road is moving a little bit toward that tree, but the key thing is the power line is gonna be running right through the middle of where that tree currently is located.
Okay.
That's my understanding of the why. So it's gonna be road construction moving closer to the tree and wires running right where the tree is situated now.
Okay, and that's the reason that
That's the reason for
the
that.
town believes that one is necessary? Okay. Yeah, because that, the other large trees, they're clearly in a place where they look like they gotta go, and the one that is further up the road a little bit, it looks like half of it's dead. Anyways, out of the three large ones, it was that one that I had questions about in particular.
Yeah, and he sent me a copy, kind of a revised map. I don't know if you wanna see it on my phone, but kind of shows where the power lines are gonna lay out. I don't know if you wanna see that or not.
That's probably the one you're looking at.
Those, I think, these are the ones he just sent me this afternoon. They're kind of
Yeah.
marked up in red ink.
Yeah,
Well,
orange.
that landed in the mailbox
Yeah,
sometime
orange
today.
is the
Okay, that might
36
be the
tree,
same one.
which is right in
Right.
line with the power lines, and then the red dashes are the power lines themselves.
Yeah, okay, see if that's what I've got here.
Yeah, and to the best of your knowledge, well, and I don't know if you have any knowledge about how the plans were drawn, but do you know if this was minimizing the environmental impact, specifically the loss of old trees? Do you know if that was taken into account when the plans were laid out?
I would assume as much, but I really don't have much knowledge on the planning stage of this project.
Okay, well,
But I do know where they're going to be doing a lot of excavation work and heavy equipment. That tree is gonna, even if it were to stay, is probably gonna sustain substantial root damage anyway.
Is there like a dam on this river near there?
I don't know, not immediately by the bridge that I can see, but
on the upstream side there is.
is there? Okay.
Yeah.
That's an old dam
Yeah.
that just fell out of disrepair
I
quite
was
a
gonna say,
few
it's
years
not doing
ago.
much damming, it doesn't look like.
Yeah, they stopped repairing that many years ago.
So it's just falling apart at its.
Yeah, it was the local neighbors did it for many years, and DCR got involved, but then nobody wanted it anymore, it just kinda fell apart. But it's right close to the area they're talking about.
Yeah, there is a state agency that takes those over. I don't know if, I have no idea if they've.
Yeah, I
started
think they
on that.
discontinued it.
This is being funded with state money, right? A big part of that from,
I don't know anything about
it's
the
been on the
funding on this.
MJTC's list for a long time, and I knew it was coming close.
Travis was gonna try to zoom in, I don't know if he's available in there, if you can see that or not, he may have answers to those.
I don't know if you see.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
There he is.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, Travis, can you comment on those questions?
Yes, this is a part of the bridge tip grant. So right now they just sent it in for the 25% to look over. I got this moving along because we're trying to keep it moving along. I talked with Eric Nova of DOT today, which gave me the updated plan there, which explains the 36-inch tree that you had in question. And I left you two of those updated plans. One was the
Recording in
utility,
progress.
the power line going through that tree, which I have marked in orange for you, and any other trees on the left side. You can see the arc for the crane to be able to move and put the bridge portions into place.
Yep, we have the plans and we're passing them around the table right now.
To see him? Yeah. Yeah. Nice to see it come to fruition.
Yeah.
Great.
Did you wanna see?
So, Travis, is it your statement that the plans are drawn to have the minimum impact that you can in order to achieve the objectives that you need to. Travis,
Is he still there?
do we still have you?
It doesn't appear that he's there.
Yeah, you dropped down to an attendee again.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yep, we can hear you now.
Alright. Alright, what part didn't you get?
We didn't get any of it. After I asked the question, you dropped off.
Okay, so I had talked with Eric, Nova from DOT, and he said they had taken all that into consideration, including the property owners that are right there on the corner, and, to the fact of, that they are able to keep his wall that he had there. And, what they're doing is, that corner really wasn't fit for the road. They're trying to take, the abrupt corner out and make it more, you know, more travelable. So what they did was they were able to get it to at least 35 miles an hour, where the road is actually 40. And the corner itself now is not even 35. So, they got it to squeak by at 35, which they're pretty proud of without disturbing too much.
Okay. Additional questions or comments from the board?
No?
All right, and this is a public hearing, so we technically need to call it and close the public hearing and then take the vote, correct? That's the order for this one?
Yeah.
Yep.
Motion to close the public hearing?
I'll second that motion.
All right, here in a first and a second, any discussion? All right, let's have a vote.
All aye.
Demelia, aye. Holman's aye.
Steiger, aye?
Monroe, aye. And do we have a motion on the application?
Make
I
a
make-
motion to, we approve the application, scenic road application to remove the trees at the site of the Burnshirt bridge, or the bridge over the Burnshirt River on Williamsville Road, and, that it meets the criteria, that we must consider in section 3.53 of the scenic road bylaw. Particularly as it regards, public safety, sounds like.
I'll
Excellent.
second that.
Here in a first and a second, any additional discussion? All right, let's have a vote.
Lived all aye.
Demelia, aye. Holman's aye.
Steiger, aye?
And Monroe, aye. All right, the town's application is granted.
Thank you, Travis.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep, thank you, Jeff.
Alright, well said.
Yep,
Good night.
thank you.
Alright, have a good night.
Thanks for coming.
I'm gonna close it, because the same thing applies to the other one.
Yep. All right, and moving, actually, I guess laterally on the list, let's call the one for 7 New Templeton. So pursuant to the provisions of MGL Chapter 40, subsection 15C, the Hubbardston Planning Board is holding a public hearing on the application for 7 Main Street for the scenic road application submitted by Ivan Aho for the removal of 1 40-inch red oak and 1 36-inch red oak at 7 New Templeton Road. Plans were made available and viewable at the town office during business hours and were distributed to the members of the planning board. So I guess to talk about this one from a procedural standpoint, Mr. Aho had come in and had asked for a copy of the application. In the intervening time period from asking for the application, the trees were removed. Obviously before we had the public hearing on it, but after the initial application was requested. Is that a correct summary of the facts there, Mark?
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. So we had a discussion, not at the last meeting, at the previous meeting before. And what we had decided is, well, really what we gotta figure out is whether or not we would have granted this application to start with before we have any discussion about what we're ultimately gonna do. So, what we did was we asked, Mr. Murray to go out, look at the plans, look at the site visit, rather do a site visit, and issue a finding to us on whether or not he believed it would meet the criteria, and some of the other subsequent remedial steps like grinding the stumps down and those kinds of things. Mr. Aho did pay in advance in order for Places Associates to be able to do that work for us. So what this hearing here is, it is the culmination of that report and that agreement, so we need to figure out where we're going procedurally. Because as we discussed at the previous meeting, we do have a situation where we do know the applicant was aware of the scenic road bylaw. And the trees did get cut. There were some facts that were entered at the meeting that we had previously that maybe there were some issues with communication with the tree cutter. We can talk about some more of that tonight, but that kind of catches everybody up to the moment on where we're currently at with this. So with that said, I'd like to open it up to the board for discussion with the idea that really at the end of this discussion, we need to have a plan and agreement on what we're gonna do, which I believe will likely be, if we decide it is a suitable application, a granting of the application with some kind of condition attached to it. And whether that condition is to ensure that remedial measures are taken, whether those conditions are to potentially issue fines for what has already been testified to as a knowing violation. And keep in mind that a knowing violation is a legal term of art, and it's different from the dictionary definition. Something can be knowing and willful without you deliberately setting out to break a law. You just have to be aware of the law, and you just have to purposely do an action that led to the cause. So it's a little bit different than the dictionary definition. So with that said, I'd like to open it up to the board for discussion.
It's always good to have attorneys here who can teach us and give us the insight as to the right wording. I will start off by indicating that, first of all, I think we parameterize this here by indicating that from the time that the trees were cut to the time that we actually had our hearing, a certain amount of days had elapsed, and we had very clearly indicated that we wanted to limit any kind of fines to within that timeline. My understanding is that was, I think it was either 11 or 12 days, and we can go back to the records, but I do believe that there's a $300 a day penalty that goes along with this here. But even though we're having a meeting now, which is a month later, it would not extend all the way up to today's date. So we would be limiting the penalty to be within the timeline that was originally thought. I hope that the board remembers that and is potentially in agreement that we at least parameterize it within that limit. Any questions regarding to that from the board?
So I agree with what you're saying there, and for me, there's ultimately two things that I think we need to balance. So we have what, from a legal standpoint, is considered a knowing willful violation. We also have the applicant who, after being called to a meeting, was cooperative and did work with us. So that, there's certainly some mitigation that I think we need to take into account there. I think it's up to the board to determine what that is, because we do start with kind of the worst case scenario, which is knowing willful violation. But then we end up cooperating and working towards an outcome. So I don't think that cooperation completely does away with the fact that we started with a willful knowing violation, but I think it certainly helps.
I would tend to agree with that, yes.
Can I just, he's here, Mr. Aho, right?
Yeah.
It was maybe, I misunderstood, but what I understood he said was the trees were marked, and he was aware of this law, and that they were sort of a miscommunication, and that's why they were cut. But, so I do think that maybe he didn't, it wasn't like a blatant, I'm cutting down these trees and getting permission afterwards situation, to my way of thinking. I also think, that there is no, I mean, I did go out and look at the site, and I'm reading Bill's letter. There's no question really that it could have gone anywhere else because of the dam that's there and everything taken into consideration. And I think, you know, he did pay the $450 for Bill to go out there, right? That was paid in advance. So, yeah, I don't see this as quite the willfulness. I see it as more of a mistake in communication,
If I may,
but
if I
maybe he
may.
can clarify that. That isn't to say it isn't a violation.
No, if I may, I mean, you have a great point. The only concern that I do bring up is Mr. Aho is I believe you're a licensed electrician, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and you also, this is not the first time that you work in a situation where you're purchasing a piece of property or affiliated with a company that purchases a piece of property and does work on it, right?
No,
No, what?
this is the second time purchasing property.
Right, so this is not the first time. As a matter of fact, I believe you're familiar with Raytech company?
Yeah.
Okay, and so Raytech has done business here in the town of Hubbardston before, and as a result of that, and being affiliated with them, you really should be knowing very clearly what the rules and regulations are. I understand that you are the owner of that parcel of land and that you are developing it for the purposes of eventually selling it, correct?
Yes.
All right, so my concern here, Mr. Aho, is that you have all of the information, you have relationships with companies who have done work here in the past, and as a builder and as a person who works in the construction business, it is your responsibility not just only to do the work, but also to manage to maintain a view of those people who are going to be working on this premises, and it's your responsibility, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so from that perspective, I would respectfully indicate to the remaining members of the board is that, yes, there is a failure of communication, but this is a failure of communication that is the responsibility of the builder to manage and maintain, and we cannot just sweep this under the rug. And I think there is there's a need for us to account for that. I understand that there has been goodwill after that, in the sense that he has come in, he has acknowledged this here, and the fact that he has also taken into consideration that the remediation needed to take place, which is basically the grinding of the stumps, which I'll object the fact that the stumps have been ground without us coming to a final determination. So you've taken another step without us telling you what that step should be. You did the right thing. I'm not objecting to that. But again, you're not taking the instructions from this board.
Oh.
So that for all intents and purposes, that's the second time you go ahead and do something that is not given to you via instructions by this board. And so I see a precedence here for us to take some action and impose a penalty.
Looking around for the rest of the board.
So was Bill's findings that this was necessary and appropriate? If he had applied?
Yeah, Bill, the report is available in there, but Bill did conclude that we likely would grant it and that it would be necessary.
And did he lay out the steps that he believes were necessary for remediation?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of, and this is an opinion, a single individual opinion, not speaking on behalf of the chair of the board. I think there's a little bit of squish in terms of some of the sightline commentary, but from a personal opinion, I do think if the proper procedures were followed, we would have likely granted this application when it went through the first time. But take a moment and read it yourself. We're doing okay for time, so please take a look at it.
I mean, then my opinion would be that we don't need to induce penalties on this if we would have approved it anyways, and if we as a board do approve this, then I don't think the penalties are necessary as long as he meets these recommendations from Bill and actually does complete the remediation. That's my opinion.
I'd just like to interject the fact that I agree with what you said. I'm not in favor of fining people, but we do have our regulations and our rules that we all have to go by for everyone here. And if we're just gonna sit here and not do anything to anybody when they break the rules, I don't know if, what are we standing on to do this here? Has he been caught before doing other things against the town regulations? Is this the first time really this has happened, or? Cause the thing that bothers me the most is you came in, you knew you had to get the application. What did you tell your contractors that were doing the trees?
I honestly forgot to tell them to not cut the 2 trees that were next to where the driveway was staked out with.
Were they marked at all?
Yeah, they were, with the ends of the driveway was marked, the trees weren't marked, but the end of the driveway was with stakes and ribbons, and I think there was some confusion and they got cut and they weren't supposed to be.
So when you came in and talked to Mark, correct?
Yeah.
And got the application, did you have an understanding of what the bylaw? It's been out there for a while.
Yes.
Cause I'm not in favor of fining people, I really am.
And I understand it, and we're not here just willy-nilly finding. I do, as I expressed earlier, I think there are issues here of going ahead and doing work, not supervising, which for all intents and purposes brings concerns to me, not just because of what has happened, but for future parts of this project. And the fact that he went ahead, that this project went ahead, right, and did the grinding without us basically giving the directions even to do this here. So this basically continues. I would like to propose that we consider that the fine be limited. I mean, we do have a time limitation, and that we don't necessarily have to take the full 11 days. Let's assume again that the 11 days were $300 apiece, and that will be $3,300. I think that we should potentially look at a lower fine, but at the same time understand that Mr. Aho has, as a result of coming here to the meetings, therefore he should not be penalized for the full amount, but should be penalized for a subset of that amount, which should be determined here by the board as to what is reasonable.
So, your building permit's been on hold during this time, hasn't it?
Yes.
Would you have already started foundation work and such if your permit was not on hold?
Probably.
So, I guess that there wouldn't really be a way for you to quantify what the actual expense towards that has been, other than perhaps what the interest on your construction loan had been.
Yeah, I guess so. It's hard to quantify what it would cost.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yep.
What if we hold this over this gentleman's head for the next year? You break any more rules, you're gonna be fined the full amount for the full extent of time that Francois presented.
The 11
The
days.
11 days, $3,300.
What if we hold it over his head for the next amount of time? Go by the rules, please. You know, and respect the boards
And
and
then
the
you can be
town's
done.
regulations. I'm not in favor of fining
Yeah.
people. I can't definitively say that you did this on purpose. People do make mistakes. Whether you didn't care or not, I don't know. And I haven't heard that yet. I would love to have something held over him, so if he does it again, he's gonna get the full extent of the fines.
Just want to understand what you mean by do it again
If he breaks any of our rules when he's doing his project, then
on this particular project
Or-
or any future project.
in the next year or so, I don't know, it's
I'm-
just, I like doing that, cause
Is
Being-
that within our scope, though?
With
Yeah.
my,
That's a-
with
yeah.
my past
I-
career, that's what a lot of people had, you know, come on, just go by the rules.
I agree, it makes sense, I'm not sure
Yeah.
how we execute.
I don't know if we can
Yeah,
do that,
I'm-
that's my suggestion.
I'm not sure that we have the authority to
Authority?
do it.
Okay.
What I think I would suggest, just kind of taking the temperature of the board, is, we've held the building permit for a month. That's a pretty, that's a pretty serious thing on its own. I do think because we have a violation here, of somebody who knew what the rules were, is acting as a general contractor and is supposed to be held to that standard. I think we have to do something, but if the general sense of the board isn't that it shouldn't be a fine, my, not speaking as the chair, but speaking as a single member, I think what I would propose would be, we fine for one day, we do the $300 for one day. That way we don't put something that hangs on our agenda forever. That way we don't have to set up something that either Mr. Murray or Mark has to oversee, causing the town to spend more money. Because we do have a willful knowing violation here, and keep in mind it's different from the dictionary definition. I see your point that we shouldn't make in a habit of driving up large fines, but I think in this particular situation, we fined a day, we've held the permit for a month, and we had the consulting fees, so that seems like that is proportional to what happened. I don't know if the rest of the board feels that way, or if somebody wanted to make a motion to that effect.
I think that's reasonable.
I think it's also very reasonable, and I hope that Mr. Aho understands that we're being extremely lenient here. One thing that I will make a note here is that, the board, by the way, forgot to assess an additional 15% on the $450 fee. We're not even going to go after that, so, and
It's actually not true.
I'm sorry?
We actually did.
We did.
Oh, you did get it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was
Yeah.
on the understanding that we never did, my apologies. So I think, I'm with the board on that. I mean, I do not like to take extremist views. I will do mention is that there are some real big check marks against you, again, being not the first project. You're working with a company who has done work here in Hubbardston before, and this is kind of like, in my view, this is like the second time that you've done things that are not permitted by the board or has not been instructed by the board. We're being very lenient, and so I would suggest that you consider this here a fair warning. We are serious about what we're doing here, in terms of how we like to protect not only our land. Remember, these trees were not your trees, these were trees that belong to the town of Hubbardston, okay?
Yeah,
So-
thank you, Francois. Yeah, I think it is worth commenting that, you saw the hearing that we had with the town, and there was significant back and forth that went on with Travis ahead of time to find out information about what was going on. This particular planning board does take the scenic road bylaw very seriously. And I hope that's the message that the community at large gets out of this. And with that, does somebody wanna make a motion?
Make a motion, can I, just before we do that
Yeah.
though, I think that we should put in that motion that is, that when we approve this application, one of the conditions should be that he follow all the recommendations in paragraph 4 of Police Associates. Particularly, Bill made the point when he was sitting here, making the level area 20 to 30 feet from the roadway edge to the west. And he did say the stumps had to be ground in this case, so the fact that he's done that.
Have you received a copy of Mr. Murray's letter?
Yes.
Do you know what we're talking about here?
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you? Does it put any undue burden or anything on you?
No, I think I understand that.
Yeah, we're essentially just asking you to have the road be at, the driveway be at grade there.
Okay.
That 20 to 30 feet in, because it's a fairly, turns in front of his house and it drops off. So I do think it's a safety issue. So if, so
It's
I'll
a
make a
danger to
motion.
whoever's coming in and
Yeah.
out of that driveway.
Yeah, Mr. Murray's position on what he believed our position would have been is based upon the sight line. So and the reason this came up is because a subsequent observation in there was that if the driveway isn't brought up to grade, there's still gonna be a sightline issue even with the trees gone. So, that's ultimately why he made that recommendation and why it's in there.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that the planning board approve the scenic road application for the property located at 5A New Templeton Road, applied for by Mr., how do you pronounce his name? Aho,
Aho.
Mr. Aho, on the condition that he follow all the recommendations contained in paragraph 4 of Places Associates letter dated October 31st, and pay a fine of $300 for violation of the scenic road bylaw by not filing prior to the cutting of the trees.
I will second the motion.
Hearing a first and a second, any additional discussion?
The only discussion item that I'd like to present here is the finding that we have here, including the additional item that Alice has suggested. Will that be, or does that have to be presented to the building inspector or the building party so that they're aware of what the conditions are?
Yeah, we can certainly give it to Duffy, and Duffy is currently holding that building permit and is gonna be looking for us to say.
So I'd
go
like
ahead
to
and
make a
release
friendly
it.
amendment to just ensure that the findings of this particular permit be also submitted to Mr. Duffy for follow-ups.
Accepted.
Okay?
Okay, further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, let's have a vote.
Do we get a second?
Oh,
I see.
we did get a
We
second.
did get a second.
I think we also need to actually close the public hearing.
Yes.
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 I'll make that
Oh,
motion.
okay, I'll second
I'll
the
second.
motion.
Hearing a first and multiple seconds. Any discussion on closing the public hearing?
Vote to close the public hearing.
Vote.
Lived all aye.
Demelia, aye.
Woman's eye.
Steiger, aye?
Monroe, aye. All right, and
And now we'll-
Vote for the.
and now we
Motion.
have Alice's motion represented with a second from John. Any further discussion on that?
No.
All right,
Woman's eye.
Demelia, aye.
Lived all aye.
Steiger, aye?
Monroe, aye. And there you go. That's the end of that. So as we said, we'll transmit that over to Duffy. As well, Mark, can you send? One of us will send Duffy a message. We'll both send Duffy a message, and we'll let him know that we had this meeting, and we'll let him know that that's coming, because Mark's gonna have the actual language in the minutes.
Right.
And that's how that will get transmitted to him, and then, unless you have other issues with Duffy, that should get you along your way.
Okay. The town of Hubbard's don't wanna check for the 300 fine?
Yes?
Yeah.
I think this goes directly to our,
The building department, right?
no, because this goes to the planning board, right? Where does this go to?
It's a fine under the general bylaws. It might go to the collector or the town clerk.
Okay,
We can make
I
a
mean,
check
if
to
you
the
make a
town
check
of
to the town of
Hubbardston.
Hubbardston,
It'll be-
Mark can
Okay. Be
take
taken
that
care of.
for you, and we'll put it in the file, and we'll find who should be getting that.
I think it goes to the clerk.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
where they all go, isn't it?
yeah,
Can I make one
No,
more
it's
comment?
clerk.
Yep.
'Cause we should let Bill Murray know
yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
we'll copy Mr. Murray on that too.
I'll wait till later.
Excellent, so moving on the list, just cause I think I can get it really quick and I just wanna go slightly out of order while we're still doing tree stuff, let's just briefly talk about 44 Heldville. So this came up, there was some miscommunication that went on it. There's some confusion about the criteria for closing out the cutting on the height of the stumps. What we ended up finding from researching the records was that the planning board had committed to it being done when the stumps were cut to 6 inches or less. And I can say from driving by it myself a weekend or two ago, the stumps were cut down to 6 inches or less, and the chunks were laid up next to them, so you could see that they were pretty clearly cut.
Oh, wow.
So.
Well, we picked them up.
Yeah.
I'm not looking at them all winter.
Yeah.
So, it does appear that the applicant is in compliance with the recommendations from the planning board and the recommendations from our consultant. I guess just to tie that off for the record, should should we have a motion and a vote on that, just to have that be done, because it's come up so many times?
Do we need them? Do we need to close that out? I don't think so. We already made motions, said what they had to do.
Yeah.
Alice?
Alice, do you have any thoughts on whether we need a motion to close that out?
I just think,
Thank you.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of up to the applicant too.
Okay.
And-
Well, I think we can just acknowledge on the record that you were
Yeah.
all set with us. And,
Officially
well,
welcome to Hill River Road.
yeah,
I know.
and we'll also communicate that to Duffy, cause I think he was holding up your occupancy permit on it, so.
He might have been, I don't know, he's waiting for like a fence to be in, which the builder put in, it's
Yep.
another situation, but,
Well, thank you.
All right.
thank you guys.
Have a good night.
Isn't Nate-
Well, have a great night.
Yeah, take care.
Have a nice Thanksgiving.
You too.
Thank you, you
Thank
too.
you.
Enjoy.
Alright, so moving on to something that is different, we have an A and R for 28 Hill Road, which is a lot line adjustment. So, will you folks please introduce yourself for the record and tell us a little bit about what you're trying to do here?
Sure, my name is Michael Votruba. I'm here on behalf of the owner, Peter LaPierre, my father-in-law as well. And basically we have 2 lots on Hale Road, and we're doing a line adjustment on the interior line to make some room where we'd like to put a house up on the hill kind of thing. And that's generally what we had. Did we submit, or did New Environmental Design submit some plans?
Mhm.
You guys,
Yeah.
you guys had,
There,
is that the?
we've got 3 copies.
So I don't know if you like to hand these out. Just so you. And I guess if there's any questions, would be more than willing to discuss. Anyone else? You guys all set?
I guess I'm gonna have to look at
Aren't we
this.
taking all
It's so
those
small. I
things
had
and weight it
trouble
down on
seeing
some?
this yesterday,
Yeah.
understanding. This is a very confusing.
Okay, so parcel A,
Yeah,
this,
this is a confusing A and R.
the purpose of this plan is to take parcel A to be removed from lot N12,
Yeah,
which is,
let's go through it quite a bit.
Is this
Very good.
currently,
Moving
this is
from
currently is a single lot, right?
Currently 2 lots.
Oh, there are 2 lots.
There's 2 lots.
Okay.
So it's what's
Okay.
going on here, I'll show it at
yeah, so
both
they're
maps,
cutting
I
this
guess,
piece
just to
out
kind
and
of
they're putting
clarify.
this
This is the existing lot line
Okay, that makes
for
sense.
existing one.
This
both
one?
lots.
Which
That's
we
the
did.
existing lot line.
Yeah.
And what's being changed is to this lot line, which the
This will go away.
our reasoning, not that it's necessary, is we're looking to hopefully fit a home here, and we can't fit the setbacks that direction, leave some room from this neighbor and things like that.
Okay, so the current acreage that that lot
Yes.
N12R has is
Then this will be there.
1.836,
This lot will look like that.
or that, no, that's gonna be the
That's
new
the
one.
new acreage.
The old acreage
they still have
included
their frontage, they still have enough
0.877
square,
acres.
0.877 acres is
It's
being
80,000
transferred from
square feet.
this lot to this lot.
Okay,
So what's the total for this lot? that you
Wait.
want to do this?
The total for this lot,
no, for this lot.
For this one, yeah.
1.836.
It has to be 2 acres.
No, 80,000.
After you cut the
80,000
piece
square,
out,
80,000 square
Yeah,
feet.
80,000 square feet is what the rule says, it's not
Yeah.
actually 2 acres.
Okay.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too, cause when
Yeah,
I
yeah,
first
yeah.
looked, I was like, it's a
Everybody says 2
it's a
acre lots here.
non-conforming lot, because the 80,000 is covered in 2
confusing.
acres.
It is
But then,
80,000,
yeah, but then I looked at it, I was like, no, that's not actually what the rule says.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
It's 80,000 square
I know
feet.
the office that did it double and triple checked.
Now you say the 80,000, I kinda clicked here.
So you're staying within the compliance, I mean,
Correct.
this lot, however, has. So the only question I have here is what is the frontage of this lot here? Cause currently what I'm reading here is it has a, what is it?
144.74?
Plus
And the-
67
the-
or
yeah.
69 or something.
Where?
So Mark and I actually spent a couple days talking about this.
Okay.
because when we both looked at it, we were like, it's non-conforming, it's only
Right.
144 feet. So
Right.
that's that
Plus the
meet
60.
and bound, and
Yeah.
then that.
Okay, so
the
that
numbers
other
on the
section
opposite
is
side.
It's
60.
144
I
plus
see now,
68.
okay.
point
And the
four
frontage
five.
hasn't changed on either lot.
No, no, but the question I had, because when I looked at the 144, I thought that was the total frontage you had, but you
Yes.
you do have 200 feet of frontage
Yes.
already.
More than-
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
About
It's
213.
just, this is very confusing the way they have it listed here.
yeah, okay.
can I ask, why don't you wanna put the house here?
There's this home here.
Yeah.
And this home here.
Yeah,
And I guess just to give some separation, it's also, there's a little bit of a hill in here. Once you get up towards this area, it becomes a little flatter. Obviously not shown on
Cause this leaves a very awkward shaped lot. Did you consider cutting it so this piece, you know, I mean, I remember was on the board when this first lot was created, I think, right? This was done not too long ago.
1987.
Oh, long, oh, not
No,
that far.
sorry, you were on the board in '87. You were just a baby.
Alice, you didn't live here.
I was wearing
diapers.
I wasn't a thing yet, so.
I remember this Mayo Road and Hale Road, there was another couple
Yeah,
lots here somewhere, but,
There are no restrictions on the shape of lots, so.
See.
well, there's the one about, it has to be the same width, but this house is up front, so it could not taper back to a, behind the house if you didn't have the frontage with it.
I think from what I understand you're saying is you're trying to get that extra parcel so that the house can actually be built in this area where
So-
parcel A now is.
So right around this line here is
Yeah.
about where they're looking to put the home, cause there's actually a decent view looking that way towards Wachusett Mountain and the,
Okay, so you're
Farm
trying to take
fields.
advantage of the view too.
trying to.
Okay.
So the problem within here is it's just a little bit tight on each side here. We're trying to give ourselves some breathing room. It might be a little further back than that, but give a little bit of room so that we can make sure we have our setbacks between here
Mhm.
and here with everything that's
Mhm.
needed.
Okay.
is this house occupied?
Yes.
So the person that owns this house owns the whole, both the
Correct.
lots don't, and that's you, or your father-in-law?
That's here, yes.
Okay, and I did see, we're doing the overlays, there's some wetlands on this property.
There's some wetlands
In the back.
in the way back here.
That's, let's see if I can access GIS maps, they don't print well, but
This is this lot, and then this would be this lot, and this is the old lot, so it's a wetland. Oh, this I traced over the,
Yeah.
so they say there's a wetland,
Right, so that would be part of possibly in this area here.
so with this remaining person, he would have to cross the wetland to get to the back of his lot. I mean, his driveway's up here, it's not a formal wetland. I'm just trying to figure this out.
Yeah, I know that these, obviously this is the overlay, so I don't know how
Oh, you
accurate
can,
this.
the lines are accurate though,
Right,
if you look
right.
at them, you can,
But
it's there, you
both the wetland lines on the overlay
oh, it might
and the
not be
survey lines
accurate.
shown aren't exact. I'm not saying that there isn't wetland there. I know that any disturbance within 100 feet of the wetland would have to go before the Concom. I don't believe that's going to be the case, but that would. I believe they came
that
and
would come
visited.
into-
They
that
came
would-
and visited your lot when you did a building
Yeah, they
permit.
did-
So
they
the
came-
it sounds like the
Yeah.
Concom in this town comes out. They came out on this lot when they built to check.
Well, and our standard on this issue is that, it's supposed to be written certification from the surveyor, professional engineer who prepared the plan, that the remaining parcel of land contains the minimum required upland area required under the zoning bylaws. That's number 12 on our checklist, but, I don't think if there's wetlands in the back that makes a difference.
And
But
there,
that- no-
there is a note here that says all parcels shown on this plan contain more than 40,000 square feet of required upland area per the town of Hubbardston zoning bylaws.
Yep. So
Here.
that's, yeah, so that's the certification directly addressing that wetlands requirement.
Right, and what, I'm just trying to figure this out, alright, so, and what, there has to be that note, the 13th note too, that it, endorsement of the plan doesn't constitute conformance.
Yeah, it's there,
Is it? Where is it?
above your signature block.
Yeah, well, and that's also an interesting question
Oh, right,
that's gonna
yes.
come up later on in our administrative discussion, because
Yes,
that appears
okay.
on our checklist, but that does not actually appear in our subdivision rules,
Oh,
so.
It is in the A and R handbook that should be included. I mean, we should amend our rules to include
Yeah,
it.
we need to amend we have a significant number of rules amendments we need to do to get caught up with what we have been doing. So I guess, we should just take a quick look at the checklist, cause
Yep.
that's ultimately what gets us there. So, item 1, property boundaries, North Point, date and scale, we have
Yeah.
those things. Name of the record owner, name of the surveyor,
Right here.
and the Worcester Registry of Deeds, book and page reference, a location for it. Area of each lot. Sufficient data to determine the location, direction, and length of every street and way line, lot line, boundary line, monuments, or references necessary to establish those on the ground.
yep.
Where practical, boundary lines of contiguous and adjacent land and names of the owners thereof,
They
as
are.
determined from the most recent tax list.
Is this person still live here? 'Cause NF means now or formerly.
Joshua Theron is
He
the
just
new,
built, he's
is
new.
the new owner of that property.
Oh.
He's on
Okay,
the
so it
corner
does
of Mayo,
reflect
he's on
you.
Mayo, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that any, maybe that's was the one I was thinking of. Was that just spelled?
Yes.
Okay, then those are the lots that came first, okay.
So location of permanent monuments.
Is there anything?
Yep.
Got an iron pin here and
Yeah.
iron
Yep.
pin.
Location, names, and present width of non-public private ways abutting the property, there are none. Suitable space to record the endorsement of the board.
Right here.
Yes.
Zoning, classification, and location of any zoning district boundaries that may lie, that's entirely in residential agricultural there, if I'm correct. In the case of the creation of a new lot, which this is not, location of all existing buildings, including setback, side, and rear yard designations. Yep. Location and area of any wetlands, and this is the one we just talked about. Location and area of any wetlands on the lots being created by the plan, including the lot being created by the remaining lot. In lieu of delineating the wetlands on the remaining land, the applicant may provide written certification from the surveyor or professional engineer who prepared the plan that the remaining parcel of land contains the minimum required upland area required under the zoning bylaws,
Which we have on the,
which we have. And then 13, which is A&R approval does not constitute compliance with the zoning requirements for building purposes,
right here.
and it's there. So that is all 13 of our criteria right there.
I will make a motion to approve it.
I'll second that.
Here in a first and a second, any discussion?
I guess not.
So you look like you still have a question.
I just think it's a weird shaped lot. To strand half of the lot in the back through a narrow I understand the parties are related, but it would not be an ideal layout in my point of view, but I don't know that we have the power to say no to it if it
Yeah, I
conforms.
feel the same way. It is certainly a funny shaped lot. I don't love funny shaped lots, but I don't think we have the ability to say no unless it's just absolutely ridiculous.
I don't think we have the authority to not approve something they wanna do if it's something workable and
It
within our
meets-
bylaws.
Meets the bylaws,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
Any further discussion?
Holman's eye?
Devalia, aye.
Looked all right.
Tiger Eye.
Monroe, aye.
I brought this.
Aye, aye, aye.
I mean,
How many
that
copies do you have?
maybe should be something we
The
should
I
look at.
have the one Mylar.
Yeah.
That's something we should look at. That's kind of
And then I
what
have,
we're
yeah, and I, do you?
So we have a copy for us. is what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
I can
Well,
leave
I
you
heard
all
the
three of
resale
these
value
or
of this
however
one,
many.
it doesn't bother
You
us.
just need the
Well,
Mylar.
We
it
need
also
the Mylar.
creates.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
all
what I
right.
need. I'd like to
What
walk,
you're saying is you just need the Mylar.
I'd like to walk
I've
away
seen-
with that tonight, if possible.
I'll have to tell you about it.
Yeah.
Involve
What,
one
so
of these, but-
Westminster has a lot of problems with that, where
Why don't we bring it
And-
over?
Oh, yeah, that's probably a better
We
idea.
can chat about it later, but they have lots of areas in their town where they just have like bizarre, like J lots and stuff. Because
I get off and
they've
sit,
done some questions
too
and
long.
stuff with that.
But I think that has to be an amendment to the zoning bylaws.
Yeah,
I don't think you can do it through, you know, the subdivision. A&R lots is a state law, right?
yeah, it's
You
one of those
can't-
things where if it periodically happens, it's not an issue, but
Right.
it becomes a regular practice.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll talk more about that whole checklist, checklist.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I sign that one?
You don't have.
You
to
don't
sign
I
it.
don't have to, right?
I mean,
Then we're just signing the top copy on this?
we only need 3.
Yeah, just the,
Have you signed?
The Mylar. Do you need to sign all of them?
Yeah, 3.
Oh, we do?
What?
Oh.
No, we only signed 3.
just one.
Oh,
No.
really?
Yeah,
What do you do with the other 2?
one stays in yours,
But it has to be signed, then.
like the building inspector.
Right, so I'll just go ahead and sign the.
Whatever you'd like.
All I know is
I'm-
I'm told when we,
I'm-
we have to sign 3 of them.
I will tell you right now, I am moving us as quickly as possible once the new TA comes in to digital files. And we will not have paper copies around.
I like that idea too.
I like that too.
I missed what he said, what was that?
Well, you gotta
He's
have
gonna
it,
move us to digital stuff. It'll be digital.
this one goes to the registry of deeds,
That
so
goes
you
to
have to
registry,
have that.
that's all he needs. The rest is our issue.
I'm sure they're,
did you need more than the one copy?
Would you like to go next, sir?
I already signed.
All of it?
Two of them.
One,
The
just
two
one.
of them, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you're next.
Okay.
Oops, sorry.
Thank you, dear.
Why don't we find one?
We are missing a signature.
Oh, I didn't sign the second one.
Oh, okay.
Sure. Why not? Everyone else did. I will jump on the bandwagon.
You don't wanna get yelled at.
Okay.
And roll this one, the other is
Oh.
unsigned.
There's a Sharpie on the other end too.
Oh.
I moved the cap and then jammed it back in.
Oh, no.
Oh, do we need a date on that?
Oops.
Somebody like to do the honors?
Oh, sure, sure.
I wasn't one of the signees.
I'm already covered in Sharpie, so why not? It's the 17th.
Thank you very much.
That ends for, if you wanna go with the full Donald J.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Good night,
gentlemen.
guys.
Have a great night.
All right, so moving down the list, administrative matters, December meeting schedule.
None. Just kidding.
I think we're gonna end up having to do one. I would prefer to not do one around the holidays. It's also,
So what, it would be the 7th and then
You've
normally.
already, you've already got, the Clay Pit hearing scheduled for the 7th.
yeah, we have them scheduled for the 7th, so I guess we're meeting the 7th.
Okay, so it would normally be what, the 7th and the 22nd?
It would
Oh, no,
be-
7th and the 15th?
Yeah, because it's a weird shaped month.
Yeah.
And it starts with a Thursday, we compress them, so.
Thank you.
Good night,
We
gentlemen.
don't need to do, yeah, have a good night. We don't need to do one meeting and then another meeting the next week.
The next week,
No.
and then the
Yeah.
next week is Christmas.
It's the week of Christmas.
Yeah, so.
So I would suggest unless we had any emergency business come in, that we probably just go with the meeting on the
The
7th.
7th.
Okay.
Unless our calendar changes wildly, from people coming in needing stuff. I don't know if that makes sense for everybody else.
And then our next meeting would be January 11th.
Our next meeting after that would be.
January the 4th.
January 4th.
I'll put that down now. I don't forget.
I'm busy that year.
Excuse me?
So busy that year. All of 2023.
All right. So next on administrative matters is discussion of the town center zoning analysis document from MRPC. This is a rather large document that I sent everybody a link to when it came in. Hopefully you've had at least a quick chance to look at it, but it is essentially a report that MRPC did with some suggestions based upon other communities, also with some suggestions based upon what they think we should look at as a community. There's certainly some things, I guess switching to commentary, there's certainly some things in it that I think are interesting, but there's certainly some things that I don't think are really taking into account our personality as a community. Like, for example, I don't know that design standards and a design review committee would make sense in Hubbardston, or that any bylaw that was ever put forward that had them in there would have a chance of passing at our town meeting. So there's that. But I did wanna open it up to discussion for everybody else. Really, ultimately, what I'm trying to do here is send some suggestions back to the EDC and MRPC, because EDC is technically the lead on this, working with our support. Although I would like to see us become more engaged in this project, because it is falling behind, and we also have a paid staff member and the EDC does not. So that helps us keep things on track. What are some of everybody else's thoughts on this?
You know, there's also the questionnaire that was sent around.
Yeah, that's the
That's-
next item on
Okay,
the
all right,
agenda.
all right, so
Yeah.
you're talking about the document itself, her
Yep.
analysis.
I guess we can talk, I guess to open up the discussion on both, yeah, there was also a survey that was sent around, I sent the link to everybody, and the ask for the board was to critique the survey itself, not necessarily respond to the survey in terms of building and design preference. And I know that at least some of us did that. Ultimately, what MRPC was looking to have us do was respond in the last box on the survey, what we thought about it, what we thought worked, what we thought didn't make sense. To start the discussion on that too. My feedback on that was, I think they needed to talk a little bit more about what some of these things meant. Like, one of the questions was, do you think it makes sense for Hubbardston to have dark sky regulations? Well, we do. But the thing is if you just go out and you just ask people, do you think it makes sense to have dark sky regulations? People are like, what the hell does that mean? I don't like regulations, they're bad. But if you say, hey, dark sky regulations make it so we can all see the stars at night and don't feel like we live in a city, people are like, I like seeing the stars, that's a good thing. The other critique I had was they did a similar thing with green building standards, where it was, well, do you support green building standard like 1, 3, whatever? Nobody knows what that means as a practical matter.
LEE, right?
And I think,
the word
yeah.
green is polarizing in itself.
Yeah, and I think just sending that out to our constituents is not necessarily gonna get us back the feedback we need.
I just wanted to point out, there's also the case studies that they included in here. I think you and I had the discussion here earlier about this here. Comparing us, or using case studies to contrast Bristol, Rhode Island, Burke, Vermont, Claremont, Massachusetts, Lincoln, Massachusetts, and Lyndonville, Vermont are like, I don't think they're appropriate
Well,
for contrasting.
Well, Charlemont and Burke, I think, get a little bit closer. I actually recommended those after, so I got to take a crack at this before the planning board did because of the EDC. The original version, when this came in, it was Lincoln, Bolton, and Bristol, Rhode Island, to which was like, okay, well, I guess if we have an option of moving the ocean closer, and we also can make our average home value over $1 million, maybe some of those same things work for us, but that's not our reality. So I had suggested Charlemont and Burke, because they have essentially outdoor based economies where a big part of the money coming into the town is from people coming in to walk through the woods, ride bikes in the woods,
Okay.
do all those kinds of things. And we have similar natural resources to that. We just don't have a similar regulatory framework in which to enjoy those resources.
Good point.
So that was why I suggested those in, but I completely hear you on the overall criticism, and the EDC tried to help correct for that in its feedback, but it is absolutely a valid one.
A couple of comments about the first analysis
Yep.
that they did. And that is, they concluded there's absolute restrictions, you know, they have this, there are no unrestricted parcels of land you can build on in the center. They are all either non-buildable, or they are already built on, or they're, so I think that what she keeps saying, and she makes this big effort to show us, is if you're gonna try to develop a commercial area, particularly if you're restricted by the septic system issues and you've gotta stick with these big lots, you need to expand the zoning in that area by going out on a concentric circle or pushing it north-south on 68. And I think that that actually merits discussion, because I honestly don't see how you're gonna attract more traditional businesses to town that aren't just like home businesses if you don't create some space for them to be. And sort of this ties in with the question of this, the history of the commercial district going all the way up to Pitcherville and then coming all the way back to Ragged Hill, and now it's somewhere in the middle. And I
Actually, you
think
used to go all the way up to Garden Line.
I think that's, yeah, that's what
I think there needs to be,
we discussed in the
I
past
mean, I
an
think it
overlay
needs, there
district.
needs to be some discussion, and I think the concentric circle would work better. I mean, the discussion has to take into consideration that you know, you go back on the side across from the school, and we know what that looks like, cause we just went through the Vertex property, right? There's a huge wetland and a cliff, basically, right? So you can rezone the cliff and the wetlands if you want commercial, but it isn't gonna bring commercial
Right.
into
Yeah.
town, right? But I do think that there's the underlying zoning that merits discussion. And I think Ashburnham, which we wound up driving through the other day, going to a trustee's, reservation property, have done a lot with allowing business on first floor, apartments on third floors, you know. So I think why we can't make it look like Bristol or some of these other, there are some things we could do to both improve the housing situation and the business situation. Looking at the issue of increasing zoning and then the restrictions within the existing buildings.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. There are a lot of things that I think we can do with this that are potentially good things. And there's some that fall into this that I think would actually be pretty popular with the public. Like, we currently allow outdoor marijuana grows in the town center district, and after our experience with the last couple outdoor marijuana grows,
Not a good
I think maybe we wanna think about that a little bit more. I also think the town center is more important, the town center as a zoning district is more important than people think it is because of the lessons we learned in Vertex. Because that is the wireless communication overlay, so there are real consequences to what goes on with that. So I think there is absolutely things that we can do with this that are productive. And what I'm hoping to get out of you guys is some suggestions on those things. I also had a big policy question that I've been thinking of, that I think we need to think of as a board. Mr. Murray had actually raised it at the last meeting because there is the question of water and sewer in the town center district, and I guess there's a policy question there on whether or not we should zone in a way that is likely to create demand where maybe people will consider pursuing and looking at that project more, or whether or not we should just throw our hands up in the air and be like, well, we could never do anything downtown and we shouldn't make any changes that would make people want to further investigate putting in a system. So I don't know if that's a chicken and egg situation, and I wanted to have us discuss it.
I think over the years, I know from my knowledge, it's been talked about numerous times for city water and sewage to the center of town, because the school system and the town office buildings, they have a septic system down across from the, cemetery down here. I don't know if everybody knows that.
And
the
next to
com-
the cranberry fields.
Yes, and the common welfare for the, school and the library and all of this used to come from my mom's house across the street, and then when the state standards came in, they made them drill a well, which is actually on the common. But that's the only sources there are, and the iron content of the water in the center of town is unbelievably terrible. It would be, and that a lot of people over the years have talked about town sewage and water. It all came down to how are we gonna pay for this? You know, is there federal and state grants?
And this would only be for town center though.
Well, unless you're like other communities where you build on that, or do we attach to another community that already has that, which people have done also, which would make sense, but we're a large town. I don't think we could connect to another town and make it workable. It's a long way to go. So, but I think it's very important because I live in the center and it's terrible, and I just had to spend a fortune on my well because I lost water because it just totally clogged up with rust. And I have to have a lot of filters in the line. So it is a problem.
I think the irony should not be lost here that,
Iron in the water.
the irony should not be lost here that, you know, over 50% of our town is protected as a watershed.
Yeah.
Yet Hubbardston is deficient in its ability to provide good water services. And I think if anything, to discussions that our town members have had, specifically with regards to the payment in lieu of taxes that we receive from the, the town of Hubbardston, I should say, receives from the state for water. That should be a very, very good arguable point to make.
Yeah. Well, so just for the record and for the public, there was a feasibility study that was done. I believe in 2017. That document is publicly available on the town website, I think. If not, we'll make sure it gets on the town website if it's not there.
I think it is.
But it does talk about some of the different possible solutions. One which is doing a small water system, one which is tapping into other towns, and there's challenges for all of them. For tapping into other towns, we'd really be looking at the areas on either end of 68. But I guess ultimately the policy question that comes up there is, do we just accept that as an ultimate limitation, and we structure things where people will never butt up against the problem? Or do we set up allowable uses where someone's gonna actually come in and be like, hey, I would do this, but for your water constraints? Because right now we've kind of taken a position as a town where we have water restraints, so all of this stuff's cut off, you just can't do it. Or do we push the issue along where it becomes a live issue? Because I think that also makes a difference in terms of grants, because if we were to go for a USDA rural grant, we're gonna come and say, well, yeah, everything in town's working decent, but could we get $10 million for a water system? That's gonna be a tough sell. We're also gonna have a timing issue, because once downtown is redone, the state's not gonna give permission to put in a water system for 10 years. So
Correct.
if that discussion is gonna start in 2030, then maybe we make some subtle moves now to push the people who are sitting in these seats in 10 years, and who are sitting at the select board in 10 years to start thinking about what to do at that point. Cause it's a long time. But the short answer is, do we make the lack of water a guiding constraint in terms of how we think about this project? Or do we think, well, maybe we plan for some potential future connections?
Well, on the other side of that, I'm sorry, because I know you wanted to say something, we also have to think about septics too, because, and those are always a problem here, a lot of people have a lot of problems. The old family market over here, when I was on the Board of Health a few years ago, that was such a problem, it cost them a lot of money, because the septic failed so bad, and everything around the center of town is clay, so that's another problem. You also, we need sewage, we need water and sewage, so
Yeah.
that's kind of the whole thing. I'm sorry.
I'm just, I mean, as long as it's a wide range of discussion, I'm thinking, you know, some of the towns they talked about in that study are towns that actually have two sort of town centers, like Rutland does.
Mhm.
And it would make sense to me to take the Pitcherville area, which is not in the if we're not in the aquifer favorability area, it's outside it, meaning you can put bigger structures on it, and that has a water supply ready to go across the street from, I'm assuming the lead hasn't gotten that far from the contamination from, but that study's coming in, I don't know, he's read it, I haven't read it yet. But anyway, the lots, I don't know, there's 17, 18, and the ones on the other side of, Pitcherville Road have been set aside and tagged as a potential water supply.
Mhm.
And the sandy loam or sandy
The pits,
gravel pits, that soil is not clay, and it would be good for septic systems according to Bill. So
the
maybe
whole area would be perfect for whatever folks would wanna do up there, really would.
and it really needs redevelopment.
Yeah.
So maybe our focus should be on, creating another, you know, multifamily small business zone up there.
And
You know,
again, that
another
used to
second
be
commercial
commercial.
zone.
Years ago, that was all commercial.
So we talked about it, and this is, I guess this is still related in terms that we're talking about potentially second town center.
Yeah.
So I guess it still keeps us within the agenda here. We've talked about it on and off. There is this potential that someday we become eligible for MBTA zoning. And the scenario where that would happen would be if there was an MBTA stop in Gardner, that would make us subject to MBTA zoning, because the Westminster stop is not actually in Westminster, it's in Fitchburg. That's how we're not currently subject to it.
Mm-hmm. It's
And-
right over the line too.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And if we were subject to it, we would have to have a pretty sizable area that would be multifamily by right and would have to permit significant density. And I think about the only place in town where that would be palatable to our constituents would be that area up by the sand pits. Plus, I also think it follows what the intent of the law was when the state created it. The state is you're supposed to have reasonable housing that is accessible to the MBTA station, and there's pretty much a bike lane that goes straight into Gardner from there. And it's nice and close, and it could be on transportation. There's an actual pathway there to having it be reasonably affordable places to live with public transportation. So that's something to think about in terms of what the ultimate density of those are and whether that does in 20 years become essentially a second town center.
But if somebody needs to take the lead on that, if that's gonna happen. At the moment, it's all in ownership of two parties.
Correct.
Yeah.
So-
Well,
And nothing's ever come about from the discussions we had from all of that before, right?
They're waiting for us to rezone it.
well, we will know fairly quickly, because one of the rumblings is that the Baker administration is looking at some of these rail improvements before they leave in the lame duck period. So we might know within the next couple months if something dramatic and abrupt happens with the Northern Tier rail expansion or with the commuter rail. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw something radical come out of that. But if that did, that would put that right on track, because we would have to be compliant or else we'd lose eligibility for a whole bunch of state grants.
It isn't easy to develop, and that there's only one way in and out. You'd have to
Correct.
get another
Yeah.
corridor.
You have to add a new road,
But,
which is feasible.
and certainly the people that live up that way should have a say. You know, they put up with the gravel pits forever, and
Over
they
the
finally
years,
have a
they've-
quiet neighborhood, right? So.
Over the years, we've had a lot of problems
it's,
with the
Yeah.
access over there.
That's maybe the better solution. I mean, rather than trying to put millions and millions into transporting water and and taking wastewater away, to just have a second center.
No,
But I
it's-
do think there should be a way to grow the base, the commercial base in this town, the business in this town.
That's certainly something we should think about, and we should approach with MRPC, so I'll, do we have that thought encapsulated well in the minutes? So,
We have, speaking of that, you know, the town owns the 15 acres that is this gateway.
Right.
And, that's the subject of the study that we've just gotten. I guess everybody's on board with that. I mean, up to date on that. I don't know what they concluded, it's the next cleanup phase, but was, being considered for senior housing.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't wanna put senior housing in block, your access, the only access you have at the moment. I mean, it should all be considered as a piece.
yeah,
You know.
we'll definitely wanna look at that. So, I guess just to tie it back around, what are some other specific concerns and recommendations we should be giving to the EDC and MRPC about, the town center project? And we're gonna have lots more opportunities to chime in. This is specifically on the survey and the report, and if we think there's other stuff they should be looking at with it.
I actually disagree with you on thinking of the buzzword, the stylistic issues. Cause I think it matters. If you don't have you look at all these streets, you can see them in the pictures where the cars are parked out in front, in the front yards of the main street, right? It's really unattractive. And, and I also think the pull-in, the pocket sort of courtyard things, I mean, you could do a lot with that. And if you look at the one, marketplace we have, you know, it's just a parking lot and the buildings there, it could be done a lot more attractively with design standards, right? So I don't think that should be, and also as people redo these houses, the old houses, maybe you wanna protect that historic look. Some of them are lovely houses.
Yeah.
So I think it's appropriate to do some design standards. But whether you can sell it to the populace is another matter, but maybe if you did it right, you know, you could.
Okay. Well, we'll certainly pass along, so we'll pass along everybody's feedback from the minutes.
Also, another thing is, on the dark sky issues, there was the big debate about the street lighting on Main Street, and the people that live in those houses did not want light coming in their windows.
No, that came up on the Main Street Committee.
It definitely came up.
The lights that we wanted for the design, that was supposedly part of the design, they weren't gonna shine up into the buildings, they were gonna shine down.
And that's basically what dark sky
Right.
It's all about, yeah.
compliant
Right.
is
Yeah.
about, so people do have that, that's on their radar in this town, at least
Yep.
in the town center, the dark
I
skies.
prefer no street lights personally, but don't have a choice in that matter, so.
Well, you're balancing a lot of things, right, the safety and the traffic and the privacy and,
See, I grew up over here, and we always had street lights, but when I lived over in Pinecrest, there were none. You can go out and walk, your dog and your kids and your wife all get together, you go for a walk, and it's dark out, and if I
it's
really wanted,
beautiful.
when I wanted to see something, I had a flashlight. But that's just me, and I like that, I think that's really important, but you can't do that here, so.
There's a lot more foot traffic also in the center of town versus in
Yeah.
Pinecrest, I'm assuming.
No, these.
No, I don't see a lot of foot traffic here at all, at nighttime,
Yeah.
No,
no.
Well, these are all good concerns. I wanna try
Times have
to,
changed.
I wanna try to have our
That's
meeting not
yeah.
go on too long, so let's,
Right, okay,
any
sorry.
other specific concerns related to the report or the survey or issues that we should be flagging for MRPC?
Can you ask them with their zoned approach, knowing what it looks like on the church side of the street with the vertex thing, is there actually room on the other side of the street? Are the soils better there? Could
Where
we
are you talking?
could we behind the school, in
Over
that
here?
area, expand the commercial district on the other side?
It's wet right behind the buildings,
Yeah.
but further out, I'm not sure, I don't recall. Trying to think.
Well, we're
It would be
ultimately.
just be good to know if the only way you could realistically expand the commercial district is push it up and down 68, or
Mhm.
whether there is actually, you know, with that bullseye approach she has in her
Commercial
drawings.
district 62 and 68 was commercial for many, we've got commercial buildings down there now, up on the other end where you are. That was all there.
Yeah.
The town center district, it's kinda,
The town center is much more compact, but I do think there is potentially an opportunity to expand the footprint of the town center district in a way that
With the flow.
makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah, because to me, it seems like the town center district should actually go to the ball fields. Because like the actual things that people walk to in this town are they walk to the stores, the ball
Correct
field,
field.
and the school.
Mhm.
Like that is the walkability area in this community, and that
Parades go.
yeah, and that's how I think we should look at the town center, because that's how we functionally treat it. So I'm gonna recommend that.
that makes sense.
And I also think we should encourage them to look at the area where the Country Hen is. I hope that they stay in business a long, long time. But 30 years from now, when they're not in business, 50, who knows how long it is, that would be a really nice spot to have some kind of mixed-use development. Because it's right in the downtown area, and it's right in that walkability zone.
Mhm.
So if you were talking about a place where you could put potentially some little shops and stuff, it
It's a big
ties out
area,
to
too.
Main Street. So there's a lot of opportunities there, and I think that they should look at that for down the road for
I like that idea.
subsequent uses. So, and these are the kinds of things that I didn't get out of that MRPC report. And I think that it's because they don't know the town as well as we do. They don't spend time thinking about it.
Right.
So,
Well, the other area you could think about too is where the police fire senior center between 68 and Williamsville Road. That's a big enough area, you could do something there to add to the town center district too.
yeah.
On both sides.
Can we just do like a homework exercise where you had a map of those parcels? And people could draw what they think?
That would be fun to do. We should absolutely do that during the project. I don't know that this
They-
is,
You would need to tag them, country
Yeah.
who the present owners are.
Yeah.
And just see what the board comes up with.
yeah,
Thinking of that, especially if they didn't take it up. I agree, we might be in a better position to look at it than MRPC.
yeah, that's a great thought. So, we also need to keep this project moving along because it's fallen off of the timeline. There's also been some restructuring over on the Economic Development Committee. It's down to 3 people at the current moment, myself, Whitney, and Katie. So that's made it so none of us can really talk to each other about stuff without having a meeting, so that kind of slows the progress down a little bit. So the EDC is trying to rebuild itself, and also trying to manage this. So we're gonna do what we can to support Whitney, and the rest of the EDC with it. It's not my intention to step on any of their toes, it's just to keep this project moving. Because like I said earlier, we have staff and resources, so we can help out with that. Any other questions or comments on that? Alright, so I guess let's go with a smaller one first that we can knock off quick, which is Regional Transportation Plan Survey. I sent that around to everybody. MRPC uses it for future planning. I think a bunch of us have already responded to it. If not, please consider responding to it. But it's essentially just a questionnaire about what we use for transportation, what we would like to see for transportation, so on and so forth. But it's the beginning of a policy tool for them, so it's definitely worth looking at. Any other thoughts or questions on that one?
No.
Alright, so next on the list is discussion of issue tracker. So we are creeping up on the spring town meeting faster than I think we wanna
Think about it.
admit. So we have some stuff that we definitely need to look at. Some of it, I think we have control over. Some of it, I'm not sure that we have a ton of control over, because it depends upon other people. But what we believe it boils down to is if there's anything we want to put on the warrant, we have to have it in some kind of draft form February-ish.
Wow.
So that means January and February are kind of our working times, cause it was due, Mark, it was due at the end of March. It's like March
Warrant-
23rd or something.
Warrant article in, final form,
Yeah.
that's beginning of April.
Yeah, beginning of April. So, we would wanna have it buttoned up on our end, when March was starting, so we would wanna have had the public hearing. For some of the stuff, and I guess now's a good time to talk about it, although I can't find where I put the cover sheet of the issue tracker. Thanks. So we have some stuff, that's on this, so let's, I guess let's just look at the whole thing. So we have some short-term issues, which are following up on the reports for the cannabis and solar facilities, we're working on that. We're gonna be following up on the odor issues. We need to consider, and I don't think this happens for this town meeting cycle, we should consider the possibility of doing a modernization of our wireless communication bylaw, or at least applying for a grant to do that. That's ultimately a TA issue in order to get that started. So unless anybody thinks that we shouldn't consider modernizing our wireless bylaw, I'm gonna request the new TA to start looking at getting us some resources to help us out with that.
I think we should.
Cause there's inconsistencies in it, and it's a challenging process.
Amongst that, I would also urge that we have very clear understanding as to those lots that are defined inside of the wireless. I think there's big questions as to where they are and the reason that they are there.
Yeah,
I think we need to get some much better understanding on that front.
I absolutely have those questions too. The next on the list is like we talked about, Northern Rail expansion or possible MBTA zoning down the road. I think we already talked about that quite a bit. It's not a live issue, but it's something we should all keep in the back of our minds. Short-term projects, and this is something that we do want to have ready for the next town meeting, which is publish the bylaw updates not requiring a town meeting vote.
How's that going? Have you heard back from?
I have not heard back from KP on that. Mark, have you heard from KP on it?
Speaking of KP, I think there's also, if we are talking to them about that, we ought to find out whether or not they received a feedback from the Attorney General's office on the best bylaw, because that was supposed to be completed and delivered back to us by the 12th of November.
Yep.
Still late.
Well, they may not be late, they may have already answered and sent it to the KP Law, but we just have not received any.
Yeah, they send it directly to town council.
Yeah.
I asked Sandy today anything about that, and she said she hadn't heard anything, so.
Yeah, and our new TA is starting week after next? Or is it next week?
28th, I think.
28th, yeah.
Whatever the
starting
Monday
the
is
end of the
after,
After Thanksgiving week.
Nathan, what's Nathan's last name?
I don't remember.
Yeah, Nathan Boudreau. I had a brief chance to speak to him, seems like a good guy. He was actually here for our meeting, while he was negotiating his contract. 'Cause
Oh.
They kicked him out of the room, so he came over to hang over here and, just kinda hung out with us while he was, having his fate decided.
Good.
But seems like a good, reasonable guy. I look forward to working with him, and I've heard good things from the select board and the hiring committee.
Oh, good.
So, I think we all have lots of good reasons to be optimistic. So yeah, we'll follow up with KP about that. The other side of that is, and is it on the list? Oh, I guess it's further down on the list, but let's take it at the same time, which is bylaw updates requiring a town meeting vote. And there are definitely some of these, and the more we dig into them, the more interesting it is. I don't know, Mark, if you wanna talk about your adventures in the vault, trying to find out what's going on with the map and the bylaw.
I've still got some things I wanna chase down. I'll have a full report next meeting, but, I think, what I think at this point is that the preponderance of the evidence is that the map is what was intended originally. And the language about it stopping at Ragged Hill Road and, High Street was a error. The language in the bylaw is what was passed at town meeting, but I don't think that's what they meant.
You know who could help you with that is Bill Murray, cause he's kind of the institutional history, but I think it was zoned up to Pitcherville and then back. And then the map was amended without the bylaw being amended.
I don't know what they did officially, but it was cut back to, I believe, Gardner Cutoff Road.
That's where it appears
Yeah.
now.
Right,
And I think that's what was intended.
I think,
because
yeah.
But,
that was
but
all.
that's not what the
bylaw
warrant
says.
article said, or that the current bylaw
Bylaw
says.
Yeah.
Right.
Right,
So, we need to figure that out.
We need to fix that.
So, I guess just to identify the issue for the record and anyone who might still be watching at home, we discovered a possible issue with the language in our bylaw, matching the map, matching the votes, and we're trying to get to the bottom of that to get that fixed for everyone in the town.
For the town meeting.
Yeah, hopefully, that we probably will need an article item on to resolve whatever the
How are we gonna
possible issue is.
present that?
We'll
That's
know
a past error
once
that
we-
needs to be corrected and
Yeah.
needs to be
Correct.
reconciled.
Right.
Once Mark finishes his research, I think we'll need to talk about that quite a bit, once
Yeah.
we're sure.
My,
what the
my
facts are.
problem is that the zone was reeled back at the vote in 1991. I haven't been able to find a map from prior to 1991 to see exactly where the commercial appeared at that point. The first map I can find is 1993. And at that point, the commercial zone in that map matches what we have currently.
Which is to the Gardner Cutoff.
Yeah, to the Gardner Cutoff.
Yeah.
So we
But
could theoretically
anyway,
propose
it's a
new-
little,
It's
right?
fine.
We could propose a new restriction
Well,
limit.
the
We
one
could.
that's handed out, when we hand out our bylaws, is dated 1992, December 1992.
Right, so I mean, seems like it's time for an update, so.
Well, and there is a precedent for people just fixing it with a warrant article, just saying what everybody thinks it should be and just doing it, so.
Right.
We don't necessarily have to match either one of those exactly with a warrant article, we just have to put something and have that warrant article approved. Something that makes sense based upon
Right, what we have.
what we believe people intended and what people will support, so.
Yeah.
We just have to know where we think it was supposed to be to develop what we propose for an adjustment. And there's gonna be some other issues like that in the bylaws where Alice had gone through and marked up changes and KP came back, KP Law came back and said, we can't just change that as a Scrivener's error, you're gonna have to do a warrant article for it. So
Oh, wow.
we're actually gonna end up with a punch list of consistency things that we need to fix, so that'll be fun at the town meeting. People will be absolutely bored to tears. We'll put that at the end, there'll be like
Too bad we
6 people
can't
left.
just put it out one vote.
Yeah,
I think we actually could,
I think.
That would be nice.
That would,
yeah.
As long as everybody can see a copy of it.
Yeah, we'll let KP weigh in on that,
Right,
but I
right.
think we can.
individual corrections would just cause people to
Yep.
not pay attention anyways.
So, going back to the order of the sheet, there's a bunch of land use coordinator projects I encourage everybody to look on, but Mark is doing some awesome work for us, helping us get everything on track, including catching up on the minutes, getting everything onto the website, and I don't know if everyone has noticed, but all of the planning board minutes for essentially the last 20 years have been loaded into the Google Drive and are now searchable for us. So
Amazing.
that is an excellent thing. We're gonna do the same thing with the administrative documents and the forms and such. That way, when we're all doing our homework and we're trying to figure things out, we don't have to be like, where is this? I swear we talked about
You
this
can
at some
search for an
point."
address and everything from that address will
Yep.
come up and, yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to the current system, which is, I don't know, Alice, do you remember when we talked about this? Alice doesn't know, I'll ask. Yeah.
1987.
Yep, and we're gonna make sure that it's all yeah. We're gonna make sure that it's all backed up and securely stored, all that good stuff. So medium-term projects, and this is really where the meat of this discussion is and where the rubber hits the road. We have a few things we've been working on. The first one, which is develop consistent processes and check sheets for the land use coordinator to use. Mark's working on those things. We don't really need to look at that, but solar bylaw update with MRPC. They owe us stuff. I'm actually thinking that we should invite them to our next meeting to give us an update on where they're at, because when we left that meeting, my recollection was they owe us action items. And since then, we've provided them with the best, and I know Francois has, and I believe you sent over some other information too.
Well, actually, it was Alice who
Oh.
provided the solar.
We had gotten to a point where we had decided what we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent her that document, which was sort of a kind of in draft.
Yep.
So, yeah, if they can come, and I'm happy to work on it too, but I did send them what we have.
So,
Possible we could get that done for town meeting.
yeah,
Possible.
I think there's a real chance that that one could happen for next town meeting, depending upon where MRPC's at it, and we certainly should let them know that we would like to get that done for the next meeting. Because to your point, we had already pretty thoroughly discussed that, so.
Like the clear cutting and the setback, I mean, it was a specific list of things we
Yep.
wanted.
Disturbed
So do
land,
you
all
wanna
that
talk
stuff.
to her, the woman that has,
I'll reach out to Jennifer, cause I gotta ping her
Jennifer.
on some of this other stuff too.
and invite her to come, and
Yep.
tell her she can call me if she wants, but.
Yep. Okay, so that one is potentially in play. Town Center Overlay District with MRPC. So, like we've just discussed quite a bit, they have this fairly substantial grant to work on this overlay district. I know the plan was to try to get it onto this meeting, but I think we've fallen off the timeline enough where I don't think that's pragmatic. Do you, it's late, I don't have a great recollection, but I think there was another 6 months of tasks left on that, so I don't think the math works.
At least, it looks like to me.
Yeah, so
What about
that's,
the master plan, cause doesn't that take a vote? That doesn't take a vote at town meeting, does it?
we're gonna come back to that.
Oh, okay.
So I guess that goes on the unlikely to be ready for the spring. So I think we should keep working on it, but in terms of how we address it for urgency, I don't think the town center's gonna be there. The cannabis bylaw update, we had talked about some examples. We actually put together a punch list, and I think we're gonna find this in the minutes for 2021, because I have been trying to find the meeting where we discussed that, to go through and watch it, because we essentially wrote what we think an updated cannabis bylaw should be while sitting at this table at some point in 2021. We talked about it for like 20 minutes.
I remember it,
Yeah.
but I don't remember what we said.
If we can find that, I can write a draft of that and get that to the point of where we can start testing it with the townspeople and with industry, because it was stuff like not having large grows in the town center or areas immediately adjacent to the town center, and with outdoor grows, I think you can constitutionally have some lot size restrictions. I think where we went wrong, where the Attorney General's office slapped our hands, was because we actually made that apply to all classes of business and not just grows. So grows, we have an actual reason, but like a store, there's not a reason they have to be on a
Right,
5
right.
acre lot. But for the purpose of odor mitigation, I think you might be able to do it. There's also a lot of communities that do it that way. But I think that's actually where we ran into issues when we
Right.
proposed the stuff that we
Right.
did last time, and that it's not, you can't say no area whatsoever. So that, assuming the board is interested in discussing it before the spring meeting, I would like to keep that as a live project. If we can find, some point in the next couple of weeks, Mark finds those minutes from 2021, or at least finds what meeting it was we did that outline. Cause I've looked, I can't find it. So we'll put a maybe on that, is, unless there's someone at the table who thinks, no, we absolutely shouldn't be wasting our time on that, and it's not worth it, but It seemed the
I think
last
it's
time we talked
important.
about it. Okay.
Well, would it have been on the agenda?
No, it came up in the administrative session.
That's not helpful.
Yeah, I know, that's why I haven't been able to find it myself.
Maybe we didn't get documented.
I watched, well, it's definitely gonna be in the videos, so if we
Yeah.
can just figure out which meeting
Yeah,
it
there's
was.
only 18 or 20 of them.
I know,
It's hard
well,
enough living through it the first time, I can't
2 or
imagine
3
watching
hours.
it.
well, and I watched a few hours of videos and didn't find where the conversation was, so there's that. But yeah, if we can find that, that actually has us on a pretty good way, cause there's good models we can use. The next one is the accessory farm use bylaw. This one I can say is actually mostly running behind because I got so taken in with everything that was going on with the cell towers.
Yep.
Where it was left at was the committee came up with criteria for designing one, and then we got the letter from the state saying you shouldn't really do area restrictions. So that put us back a little bit, and then the cell tower debacle started, and then it completely got lost to the ether to that. So that, I think we could actually reconvene that committee and come up with a recommendation before the town meeting. That could probably actually happen within the next month or two. Because that one, I think, is gonna require some substantive outreach. I guess the biggest impediment to pushing that forward is that my most productive committee member on that is now our land use coordinator, and I don't know what his bandwidth looks like. But in terms of myself, I can get that committee back together and get a draft on the table with in December. So I think if we can do that as a subcommittee, then it can potentially be on track. And I have been approached by most of the members from that. They're still willing to serve. The only one I don't think I've directly approached about it is sitting here with us.
To the chair, I believe there is in our folders, just going back to the marijuana bylaw, there is a memo from Alice dated June 10th, 2021. Has the topic, do we need to revise our local marijuana bylaw? And there's a whole document there with a lot of information, and that's probably the document that you need and are looking for.
I bet you,
Maybe
I
we're
bet you it's the
looking
meeting.
June, July then.
Yeah, it's gonna be the meeting after that where we put together the outline, I bet. It's gonna be within a meeting or two of that.
So I think if we circle around those dates and look at that particular document in question, you may have what you're looking for.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Thank you very much for finding that.
I have no recollection of writing it.
Yeah, I'm,
Gone.
it's COVID time, I have no recollection of reading it. So I think we're in pretty good shape for those, for at least trying to get at least one of them onto the spring meeting. We already talked about the bylaw updates, long-term projects, and this is something that I think this is gonna be a TA issue, which is investigate the possibility of getting funding for a full zoning bylaw review and recodification.
June 17th is the folder.
And that is a thing that is possible. There is a precedent for it. I actually know that the town of Paxton just got 110 from the State House in an economic development bill to do a recodification of their zoning. Granted, they were in a situation because they just became subject to MBTA zoning, so they have to go through and do all those updates, so I think they got to use that as the wedge to open the door for it. But we're actually a community that the state would really like to target for more housing, as it is. When you look at the map of MBTA communities, there's all of them, and then somehow we're left out of it just because of the geography. So maybe there is an opportunity to get some kind of funding to help that along, because I don't think that that's something that we could ever do on our own. But I wanted to kind of take the temperature of the board on whether or not that was something worth adding to the long-term project list for us and for ultimately the TA, because the reason Paxton got that was work that their TA did.
Because there's gonna be online codification where you can interactive and stuff, you can look stuff up.
I can ask, but
It
I
probably is,
imagine
there's some
it is,
towns
yeah.
have that now,
That would be amazing.
yeah, probably
No.
is.
But is,
Good idea.
I definitely think it's very hodgepodge and needs looking at.
yeah,
But it'd be a big deal, just even to get it codified in that way, never mind amended to be, fix all the inconsistencies. Probably is $100,000 project.
yeah, it absolutely is. So we were just talking about the last item here, which is investigate the possibility of getting funding for a full zoning bylaw review and recodification. And what brings that up is I know the town of Paxton just got over $100,000 for doing that.
Oh,
So
wow.
there is a possibility of going out and getting state money to help with that. And as we've noticed from a bunch of our projects here, we have inconsistencies
Mhm.
because ours have been cobbled together over the last 40 years. So ultimately, what I'm asking the board on this is whether or not this is something that we should be directing the town administrator towards working on, because that's ultimately something the new TA will have to do and get started, not us. So I just wanted to get the blessing of the board before suggesting that that's something we should look at.
Do we need a motion, or is that just a discussion?
I don't think we need a motion on it, it's just a discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
We also truly need our subdivision bylaws reviewed.
Yeah, well, that would certainly
They're
come.
they're
Will be
worse
all
than the
part of it.
zoning bylaws in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that, I would think that would be part of it.
Yeah, so put it together. So I think, yes, recodification of zoning and subdivision.
Okay.
You can't leave without telling us what's going on with the master plan, because that is just
Yes, so the master plan.
horrible to put 95% of the work in and have it just languish.
So the what had happened is the communication broke down between Jonathan and Ryan on who was supposed to do what. We've since followed up on that. They're now both on the same page. Apparently the town is actually gonna be engaging Ryan to come in and finish up the last couple steps on that and help Nate get going with that.
Great.
So it is actively on the top of the pile, and receiving effort, and I think we have to keep following up with the new TA to make sure that that's going forward. But yeah, it had fallen off the radar because of all the transition that went on.
Does it need a final vote from town meeting? I can't remember. I know I've asked that question.
I think it does.
Yeah,
So then you ought
I
to
would
make,
think it does.
that makes sense that
to
we have
accept
to.
it, which would be a hearing and, you know, a final hearing and
Yeah.
yeah, so we should really try to nail that one for the town meeting, cause that's just dragged on. There'll be time to do the next master plan. Finish it, you know?
But at least we'll have a good model.
Hopefully.
So
There's a lot of good stuff in it, and it would be a good springboard for grants, I'm convinced.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So that is all I had for updates on projects, and I gotta say, I am so excited to finally be able to sit down with you guys and talk about policy stuff, because we've had so much just,
And it's not 11 p.m.
yeah, so much just worky work that we haven't been able to have a policy meeting like this in forever. It's
No.
awesome. So I thank you all for coming in and joining the conversation on it. So with that, does any members of the public or anybody else on the board have any other issues they'd like to raise?
can I just ask about the Vertex litigation status?
No.
Uh,
No?
No, I'm just kidding.
Any updates or any?
No, not in non-executive session.
Okay,
Yeah, I can make sure you get an update on that.
okay. You want a motion to adjourn?
I would gladly
I'll
take it.
make a motion to adjourn.
Second motion?
Hearing a first and a second, not debatable, let's have a vote.
DeMille, aye.
Whom was I?
Steiger, aye.
Monroe, aye. We are adjourned at 8:28.
Oh, I got 8:29.